Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing so well, and that life is treating you kindly, and that you're enjoying the change in season, because we're all embracing a change of season wherever we are in the world. And I've got a fabulous story for you tonight that's really going to lift your spirits, because we could all do with a good old story. And I've got one that you're going to thoroughly enjoy. But before we get started, don't forget to get that quintessential perfect drink. And then let's get started. Subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, I'll have a double chocolate milkshake, a blueberry waffle with maple syrup as well, I told the waitress, with lots of vanilla ice cream, please. The waitress scribbled down my order, while my two best friends that worked with me in the office stared at me with agog expressions written on their faces, unable to disguise their level of shock at my ordering such a sweet, sickly concoction for lunch. I'll have a standard coffee, said Francine to the waitress, and a turkey on rye, please. And you? She asked, pointing to Nora. Oh, I'll have an iced coffee with tuna and cheese, a tuna and cheese toasted sandwich, that is, on granary bread, please. The waitress nodded her head dutifully, her blonde hair bobbing around her face buoyantly, as she diligently took our orders down, grabbed our menus, bustled away. It was a busy Friday lunchtime, in our favourite Seattle coffee shop, situated across the road from our office block, a popular place we regularly frequented, which meant we always booked a table well in advance, or you'd invariably always have a huge wait on your hands. The food was always excellent there. The vibe buzzing, electric, welcoming, convivial, fun. Glasses tinkled, cutlery clanged, rattled and jiggled, feet glided across the floor, moving purposely, quickly and efficiently to meet the tsunami of rising orders that came rolling in from every corner of the coffee shop. The waitresses, formally attired in black aprons, were heavily laden down with sumptuous plates piled high with delicious steaming food, making their way to a plethora of different tables for the hungry diners. Delicious smells of melted cheese, cinnamon and percolated coffee drifted in the air. Then there was the chatter of voices in different resonances, from high-pitched to gravelly, raspy, low and deep, mingled with the occasional chuckles or outbursts of spontaneous gay laughter. Sometimes the background music was so deafening you could barely hear yourself think, let alone your friends talk, which could be exceedingly annoying. But then we overlooked this minor disadvantage by just raising our voices above the crowd, only adding to the momentum of the noisy vibe of the coffee shop. "Why all the funny looks you're both giving me?" I asked Francine and Nora, who were staring at me with fixed, befuddled eyes, as we waited for our orders to arrive. "Are you asking for a diabetic coma?" Nora asked me. "Why are you ordering all this sickly sweet stuff for lunch? It's not like you. You're not pregnant, are you?" she asked, raising a cynical brow. "Of course I'm not pregnant," I piped. "Chance would be a fine thing. If you must know, I need a pick-me-up. I'm feeling a little down in the dumps of late. I find sugar is one of the best amplifiers of mood. I think it's because sugar raises serotonin levels in the brain, the so-called happy chemical. Well, that's what my mother tells me anyway." "Well, if that's the case," said Nora, "give me a couple of dozen chocolate milkshakes, please. I'll be good to go then. No, seriously, Miranda, you look like something's beaten the wind out of your sails. What's irking you?" She paused for a moment, as if mulling over her own thoughts. "Now I've come to think of it, you've been rather flat all week. Not your usual chirpy, upbeat self. Are you going to enlighten us as to what's going on, or are we going to have to drag it out of you?" "Nora's absolutely right, now I come to think of it. You have been a bit off recently. Go on, spill. What's going on?" asked Francine, her face registering concern. I shrugged my shoulders in a nonchalant way. "Norma's getting married," I said flatly, as if I was talking about my next trip to the dentist. Nora and Francine exchanged perplexed private looks between each other. "But that's good news, surely. She's your sister, is she not? Should you not be happy for her?" "My little sister," I corrected. "I know I should be pleased for her, but I'm sorry, I just can't be," I said, grabbing the salt and pepper cellar and playing with them awkwardly on the table like the king and queen on a chessboard set, a as I desperately tried to avoid eye contact with both my friends. Just thinking about this topic made me green at the gills. "If you must know," I said, tears gathering around my eyelashes like opaque raindrops. "If you must know, everyone my age is getting married, having babies, but not me. It's not fair. I'm the oldest daughter in my family, but I'm going to be the old maid, left behind, unmarried forever. My little sister is beating me to the altar. Do you know what it feels like to have your young sister showing you up like this? It makes me feel like I've been left behind, forgotten, abandoned, lost, disregarded." "You an old maid?" piped Nora, pooh-poohing the very idea. "Don't be ridiculous, Miranda. You do say some outrageous things at times. As for being left behind, what on earth are you talking about? Why isn't that boyfriend of yours popping the question and proposing? What the heck is wrong with the man? He needs some serious shaking up." "I don't know," I said. "I don't know." The tears were now streaming down my cheeks as I wiped them away with my sleeve, sniffing very loudly, the self-pity consuming me, ensuring that flood banks from the tear ducts of my eyes were unable to restrain their heavy load. I began to sniffle, quiver, shake, and splutter, like the gas on a cooker that refuses to take. I mean, it's not as if I haven't dropped any hints all the time. I mean, how brazen do I have to get? We've been together for 7 years, for goodness sake. I don't know what's keeping him from asking me the question. We have such a fabulous relationship. Solid, strong, the best. And I know he loves me, I really do. But I don't understand why. Why he can't. The words seemed to choke me up, as if there was a huge fog developing in the back of my throat. "Do you think he may have an aversion to marriage, perhaps?" asked Nora. "Maybe he's scared to death of commitment. You do get men like that. I mean, what about his parents and their marriage? That might give you a greater perspective onto his kind of thinking at the moment." "They split a while ago. A nasty divorce, I gather. His mother wasn't a good person. Caused a lot of undue upset." "There you go," said Nora, reaching out to nudge my arm with her hand, giving it an affectionate squeeze, her body leaning over the table to quickly dab up my tears with a tissue. "Look at you," she said, cleaning me up. "You have a tsunami of mascara running down your face. You look exactly like a bad-tempered raccoon. If you must know, I do think your boyfriend has got some seriously cold feet. Maybe his parents' marriage has made him rather reluctant to tie the knot. That would make a heap of sense to me. He just needs a push in the right direction. Or maybe a great big shove on reflection." "Well, what am I going to do?" I said. "How am I going to get him to pop the question, short of writing a sign on my back that screams, 'Marry me,' in bright red capital letters? I need to be a little bit more subtle than that, don't I? I want to settle down, have babies, but at this rate it's never, ever going to happen," I said, mopping the tears from my face. "I'm going to be an old maid. Oh, my God, I'm going to be an old maid." At that moment the waitress arrived with our order, giving me a fleeting, rather concerned glance, as the evidence of my recent deluge of tears was apparent, as tissues had piled up around me like the fluffy clouds gathering in the sky, taking up the entire table in a sea of white confetti. She swept them away briskly with her hands, placing a long glass of chocolate milkshake in front of me. "Blueberry waffles on the way, with extra ice cream, on the house." She gave me a gentle nudge, whispering in my ear, "Whatever it is, don't let it get you down, dear. Tomorrow's another day." I was touched by a stranger's kindness. She was so very sweet. I drank down the icy-cold sweet chocolate beverage with the gusto of a young kid. The glorious, thick, creamy concoction melted down my throat, electrifying my taste buds with sweetness, soothing my mouth with its cold richness. Suddenly the world seemed a much more agreeable, less daunting place. The sugar had certainly done the trick. Nora continued, "Well, you need to be a lot less subtle in getting that boyfriend proposing to you. The way I see it, subtle ain't cutting it for you. Otherwise, if it had, it would have already worked by now. You need to be a lot more direct. Put a wedding magazine in his truck, open on a page where the married couple are staring adoringly into each other's eyes. Or write in the dust on his driver's side window, 'Marry me.' Think about it. He need never know it's you, but at least it'll get his thoughts shifted in the right direction." "That's too obvious," said Francine. "What can she do short of asking him herself?" "Oh, that's it," said Nora excitedly. "You've hit the nail on the head, Francine. Why didn't I think of that myself? It's staring at us blindly in the face. Of course. You must be the one to ask Laurie to marry you. Don't beat about the bush, girl. Just do it. Take the plunge. Be done with it. What have you got to lose? Think about it. You've got everything to gain. But I can't do that. That would be crazy. Preposterous. No, it's not, said Nora, her eyes growing round like saucers, her enthusiasm babbling over in an exuberant crescendo like the overflowing bubbles from a champagne bottle that has burst its cork under an expression of way too much haste. Don't you see? It's a leap year. This changes absolutely everything. Well, what's that got to do with anything? Asked Francine, looking nonplussed. Everything. Absolutely everything. Women can ask men to marry them on a leap year. It's a fact. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became. Of course, it did make perfect sense. I should be the one doing the proposing. Granted, I would far sooner it was the other way round, but a girl can't have everything, can she? I mean, what girl did not want her man to get down on his bended knees and pop the question? Yet there was exceptional circumstances, of which this clearly was one of them. I mean, Laurie needed a shove, not just a gentle push to get him on the right path. Nora was right. This was a leap year, the quintessential excuse to propose. Sometimes in life you have to take the bull by the horns, apply a little courage to the steering wheels, unleash the handbrake, start up the engine, accelerate, then leap towards the stars to gather your dreams like the apples on a tree. For just leaving them to rot on the branches if they failed to fall was not a good idea, any way you looked at it. At the end of the day I had bought a bunch of bright yellow roses, along with a bottle of the finest French champagne, as well as a pretty white jersey dress, which would go well with my boots, I thought. After all, I did want to look good tonight, given the nature of the mission at hand. I had never bought a man flowers before, but if I was going to do the proposing right, I didn't want to turn up empty-handed. That just didn't feel right for a marriage proposal somehow. I was going to ask him tonight, I decided unequivocally. I began in capturing what I was going to say in my mind, almost as if I was auditioning for a part in a play at the State Theatre. Laurie, I would say on bended knees, handing him the roses, it's a leap year, so I was wondering, would you make me very happy by agreeing to be my husband? Keep it short and simple, I thought to myself. No frills. Men didn't like frills, unless of course you were wearing them. The traffic in Washington had reached a gridlock, with wary, over-exhausted, impatient drivers sounding their horns obtrusively. But I didn't care a jot. Normally by now I would be groaning, hitting my head against the steering wheel in frustration. But tonight I welcomed the hold-up. Like an old friend, it gave me time to refashion and rehearse what I was going to say to my potential future fiancé. I was giddy with nervousness, twitchy but excited. Who knew in a couple of hours from now there was the potential possibility that I might very well be an engaged woman. Laurie Chandler lived about an hour and a half's drive away from Seattle, in a remote farmhouse off the beaten track with his father. In the same vein of his father, he was somewhat estranged from his mother, wanting little to do with her, claiming she had broken their hearts through a series of not very discreet adulterous affairs. Yet whenever I broached the subject with him, he would look at me with steely eyes and say, "Miranda, please, I don't want to talk about this subject any more." Why would I want to rip open an old wound? What would be the good in that? I had known better not to challenge him on this. Let's not kid, I was eager to get to the house as soon as I possibly could. But I've always prided myself with being a vigilant driver, so driving cautiously was a no-brainer for me. Furthermore, I loathed driving in the dark, avoiding it like the plague whenever possible, but not tonight, especially not tonight. Even Laurie was completely clueless I was coming. After all, every impetuous marriage proposal needs its measure of unheralded surprise, an unguarded moment, heightened by its spontaneous unexpectancy. The velvety black sky swathed the landscape in a dense, foggy, tenebrous atmosphere, devoid of light, with the exception of a few rather obscure silvery stars, whose sparkle seemed less discernible this dusky evening, almost like diamonds that had lost their gleaming, twinkling lustre under a thick petticoat of congealed dust. Even the moon was puritanical, minimalistic, parsimonious in its showing this evening, so that even the ponderosa pines, Douglas firs and spruce trees, rising up so proudly like statuesque giants on the embankments that graced either side of this long winding ribbon of asphalt, seemed to swagger against the breeze. Their menacing, sultry, triangular silhouettes jiggled ominously. If you were not too careful, the shadowy movements of the vegetation could create in your flight of fancy all kinds of ghostly deliberations that were eager to haunt your darkest nightmares. But I refused to indulge myself in such ruminations. It was not uncommon to be the only truck on the road at night, but this was a journey I made regularly, so there was nothing about the lonely drive that raised my hackles. Not until, that is, when I heard the inauspicious ear-splitting high-pitched siren of a police truck trailing behind me, pressurizing me to stop and pull over to the side of the solitary remote country road. I glanced briefly through my rear window to see a truck with a flashing bright blue light on it that didn't seem like a traditional police vehicle pulling up behind me, drawing to a pretentious stop. There was no reason that I should be pulled over like this, I thought, but I dutifully obliged like a reckless lamb to the slaughter, despite the fact that my internal antennae could feel that something was intrinsically wrong. I didn't have a damaged tail light, my licence had not expired, I was not driving above the speed limit, all my lights were working perfectly, nothing was wrong. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I physically relaxed when I saw the reassuring uniformed figure of a police officer climb out of his vehicle, walking over to my truck. I would have to check his badge to be absolutely sure he was legit, but with the exception of his truck, he almost certainly looked the part, I thought to myself. I could hear his heavy footfall as he crunched the tarmac under his leather boots, whereby he brazenly approached my truck, tapping on the window with his finger, his head bent down against the glass to peer in at me, like a goldfish in a bowl. "Is there a problem, officer?" I asked, rolling down my windscreen slightly, but not all the way. I studied him studiously through my blue eyes. He was tall, lean, muscular, built like a lightweight boxer with a golden tan, earned from what I had judged must be copious amounts of time spent languishing in the hot sun like a lizard on a lounger in some fabulously sunny location, drinking pina coladas. His triangular squinty eyes seemed to be very deep-set, small and tight, like that of a bull terrier. His large Roman beak-like nose was very distinctive, while a chevron-style thick moustache graced the stretch of skin above his mean-looking lips. The tight crew-cut from beneath his cowboy hat revealed a scattering of fine hair as black and as shiny as a raven's feathers. He could have been handsome, but there was something so shifty about his stance, a greedy, hungry, predatory, savage look in those eyes of his, like a bird of prey. There was something about this man that instinctively set my nerves on edge, but instead of listening to that intuitive inner voice, I was lulled into a false sense of security, simply by the heartening affirmative appearance of the uniform that until now had made me feel secure, confident, and tranquilized. "I've just had a report of someone's truck fitting your truck's description, driving very dangerously down this road. Now I need to tell you, miss, without any street lights, driving at a speed like this is asking for trouble. You could run over a deer, randomly hit a tree, skid in a pothole in the road, of which there are many in these parts." "But, officer," I protested indignantly, "I wasn't driving dangerously at all. I would not wantonly break the law. It's not in my character to do so. It must have been someone else you received a report about. There are lots of trucks all over the state fitting my truck's description perfectly. I can assure you of that. I haven't seen a car for miles apart from yours. I assure you I've never even had a parking fine a day in my life. I'm not about to start breaking the law right now, am I?" "Let me see your licence." I handed it to him. He studied it for a brief second. "Right. It looks above board to me," he said, handing it back to me stiffly. His flinty eyes darted around my truck like a ferret. He was brazenly using his flashlight to investigate the interior of my truck. The bright light lingered from my face, wavering over the white knit dress for a while that I was wearing, then glided up to the dashboard, along the leather seats, where it lingered and parked its dazzling bright beams over the bottle of French champagne that was seated upright on the passenger seat, next to the bouquet of now drooping yellow roses. "So you've been drinking," said the officer, pointing to the champagne with his torchlight. "I knew it. I suspected as much. You've been drinking." He said this with such jubilation. The delight in his voice almost caught me off guard. I certainly hadn't anticipated this. "No," I said, shaking my curly head of blonde hair vigorously, so that the angry curls bounced around my pale face indignantly. "Are you kidding, officer? The champagne is a present for someone, if you must know, but I've not personally touched a single drop." "I'm not convinced. Get out of the truck.
I need to give you a breathalyzer. All right, I said, climbing out of my truck, feeling more than a little flustered. I want you to walk in a straight line. I need to make sure you're not intoxicated.
This is ridiculous, I piped. Can you not see I'm sober? Do I look the slightest bit wasted to you?
Look, I said, demonstrating my point by walking up and down in a perfectly straight line for him without the slightest hint of a wobble. See, I'm walking straight. Where's the breathalyzer test you want to use on me? I'll prove it to you once and for all. Young lady, you are highly intoxicated. I was about to protest my innocence when he grabbed my hands behind my back, plunging them in a pair of cuffs, virtually dragging me, kicking and screaming, to his truck.
Let me go! Let me go! What are you doing? Are you completely mad? I'm not drunk. Can you not see? I'm not drunk. Let me go!
I watched in horror as he pulled off the mock police light from the roof of his truck, thrusting it under one of the seats to hide it away. This whole thing had been completely staged, just to get me to cooperate, while I'd fallen for his duplicitous, guileful act, hook, line and sinker. The man roughly thrust me down on the passenger seat, withdrawing a revolver from his holty at the side of his belt, holding it directly against my temple. Now you do what I say, be a very good girl, or I will blow your head off. Do you understand? I nodded, my throat clogging up with a thick fog of impending dread. You're not a police officer, are you? Who are you? What do you want with me? You've no right to abduct me like this. It's against the law. Shut up, you little vixen, will you? Do as I say, you'll be fine, just fine if you do. My heart sank like a heavy stone, plundering to the depths of a murky lake. I knew I was in big trouble, big trouble, but this was not a scrape you could get out of easily, like undoing a few drop stitches in some knitting. How could I escape the man? He had a revolver pointed at me. My hands were incapacitated by the cuffs. If that wasn't bad enough, the central locking system in his car had been activated. What an idiot I was, I thought. A perfect idiot. I should have known by the hungry look he was giving me that his intentions were highly nefarious, likely even sexual. Was he intent on raping me, I wondered? Worse still, leaving me dead? I was now scared, really scared. My whole body began to shake violently, trembling, jiggling, wobbling, quivering, wavering, convulsing, like a boat being shaken violently by a punnelling, treacherous windstorm out at sea. The man looked at me disapprovingly. Stop bloody shaking, vixen. I told you if you do as I say, all will be fine. But what do you want with me? What do you want with me? I stammered. Take a look at yourself, vixen. You're as pretty as a picture. What do you think I want with you? A nice little chat that I can get with my grandmother. But you, he said, his eyes devouring me with a greedy look, you can fill other areas for me very nicely indeed. Your whimsical, naive, innocent flesh I like. My woman that way. Always have, always will. Untainted, unspoilt, uncorrupted, noble. Very noble, he said with a powerful emphasis on the last word. You're not going to kill me. I'll do anything you ask, but please don't kill me. I won't even tell the police. I promise you I won't, but just let me go. If you're a good girl, I might just let you go, but that depends on your good behaviour and your cooperation. He grinned as he eyed the terror in my eyes with a degree of pleasure. It seemed to almost delight him in some obscene way, as if my angst was in a strange way quite erotic to him. I bit my lips tightly, knowing that trying to protest with him was not a very good idea by any manner of means. On the contrary, it could make things 1,000 times worse for me. Before long he parked his truck on the side of the embankment, obscured from the road by a couple of log-pole pine trees. The odorous man commanded me to get out of his truck, pulling me out, placing a light torch on my head. I staggered out of the passenger side door, like an inebriated drunk, almost stumbling to my feet, feeling so unsteady as I stood up. The heels of my inappropriate, moderately high shoes were sinking into the soft earthen dark floor, tripping me up at every given opportunity. My heart was pounding violently in my chest, my head was racing, with thousands of scenarios about what was about to unfold. Keep calm, I told myself. Your job now is to stay alive. Everything else he does pales into insignificance. Remember that. Where are we going? I trembled as he removed the cuffs from my hands. Just keep walking, came the man's dry voice. Any funny moves, I'll blow your brains right out. So don't get clever with me. Before long we approached a run-down abandoned shack in the woods. Get in there, he said. Now. I almost tripped over the old floor as I moved into the room. I could see that it had recently been repaired, as old wooden panels had been replaced with young wood, and even the roof appeared to have been repaired. My heart sank. It looked like this man had made a cosy little den for himself in the heart of the woods, as there was an old mattress on the floor of the shack, covered with blankets, but the blankets were covered with layers upon layers of soft hay and fresh mosses, which on first appearances seemed oddly bizarre. There were a couple of crates of Mountain Dew, several bags of peanuts on the side of the bed, some that had been eaten, as the empty bags were strewn across the floor. What if he was planning to keep me here indefinitely, like some kind of perverse slave? The horrifying thought whirled through my mind like the washing in the drum of a machine, for I had noticed that the open door did possess a padlock. The man lighted up 2 kerosene lamps in the room, perched on a couple of camping tables. The light flooded the area in a gentle light. "Someone's been in here," he said, his voice sounding less than thrilled. "Who's put all this bloody straw all over the place and all this moss? It's absolutely disgusting. The place looks like a stable. Still, it'll have to do," he groaned. "Nothing is going to spoil our fun together tonight," he said, giving me a wry smile. "Remove all your clothes now," he said, pointing the rifle in my face. "Remove them very, very slowly." I trembled in terror, my hands almost disabled from obeying his advice. "Did you hear me? Get those goddamned clothes off. And I said slowly, but I didn't say gridlock." "You're seriously sick, having to hold a woman at gunpoint like this just to get your evil way with her. What's wrong with you? Can't you get a girlfriend of your own, that you have to go picking up random women off the street? I wonder what your grandmother would think if she knew what you were doing to me." The words cut him hard, without anything to cushion or subdue the blow, which was rather like a bucket of cold water flung across his face, for the man's demeanour shifted dramatically from the face of a guileful man to a guilty little boy, who knew he was doing something grievously wrong. Somehow pictures of his grandmother perceiving what he was doing with me shook the foundations of his being, robbing his warped fantasies of their erotic appeal, which subsided as fast as a kid's quick descent down a slippery slide. "What the heck did you bring my grandmother up for? You've gone and spoiled the mood," he complained, his rifle wavering with confusion in his hands, as if somehow he now had serious doubts of orchestrating his insidious plans upon me. For in his mind's eye, visions of his grandmother's face loomed before him, like a bright, dazzling Christmas decoration that could not be overlooked. The man was still pointing the revolver at me, but his fingers were unsteady, nervous even. His aim was rather wobbly. It was as if he wasn't certain what his next move should actually be. Thankfully, he'd stopped asking me to undress. Quite suddenly, the door of the barn swung open wide, with a loud creak. There, standing in the doorway, was a giant female Bigfoot. I'm not sure what induced her to enter a dilapidated shack, where she was clearly nesting, for the light of the kerosene lamps through the crumbling shack windows must have been clearly visible, giving her advance warning that someone was there. For me, seeing this anomalous creature was so utterly extraordinary. It was like my paradigm of the world shifted 180 degrees, for I had never believed that such a creature existed in our reality. But here she was, larger than life, majestic, powerful, tall, lofty, exceedingly big. I would describe her as about 7 foot tall, with a pyramid-shaped head, very short neck, lean muscular body, overlong arms, powerful legs, and long flowing dark hair that swathed her entire body. The grey skin beneath the hair was very discernible, along with the ropey muscular definition of her torso muscles that were so bodacious they were enviable. The Bigfoot's face possessed a soft feminine contour that announced her gender very precisely, beyond her full heavy breasts that dangled low upon her chest. Her chin was rounded and gentle, the graceful contours of her face almost pretty. The furrowed forehead was sloped and densely wrinkled, the skin dark and leathery, the aquatic nostrils large and flared. Her eyes seemed deep-set and dark, that in certain obscure lighting gave off an orangey-red eye-shine. My captor turned around to face the Bigfoot. The astonishment on his face was arresting. His slit eyes seemed to widen slightly, with an expression of undisguised horror in their depths. Yet oddly enough, he failed to scream, as I sanctioned that the words had eluded him, held to ransom by his crippling, destabilizing fear. The Bigfoot's eyes seared through him like an X-ray machine at an airport, going through the luggage, eyeing out every single nook and cranny that may be hiding any insidious dark secret. In that poignant moment, I realized without a shadow of a doubt that the creature was literally telepathic. So I used this quintessential opportunity to shout to her in my mind, "Please help me! This man is trying to kill me, rape me, harm me. I'm not sure which, but please help me, please." I said all this in my mind. The creature heard my thoughts, for her head swiveled in my direction like an owl's. Her face was lit by recognition. An all-knowing knowledge seemed to grab her attention. Her eyes darted to me, holding my eyes in hers for a moment like a gentle, encouraging hand, with a loving reassurance that magically transpired only between the two of us. In that second, I knew this creature had my back. In a trice, the Bigfoot's demeanour changed towards my captor. She became like a belligerent, protective mother towards me. Her shrewd, savvy eyes saw the revolver that was now hanging almost loosely in my abductor's hands. She was clearly acquainted with this weapon of horror, which she held in little regard. Her anger rose like an undulating high wave in the ocean, crashing to the shore with a forceful discharge. She snatched the revolver from him with little difficulty, for it slipped out of his hands like butter. My captor did not move a muscle, nor did he flinch or even react. He seemed frozen in space and time, locked in a trance like a spell of which he was now held prisoner. Even his eyes looked glazed like a dead fish. The Bigfoot grabbed his head in her hands, thrusting it towards her face. She glared into his eyes, her own eyes like sharp daggers. As she did this, her lips curled back. She screamed into this man's face so loudly that the vibration of her ear-piercing yell caused the entire shack to wobble and shake. The man screamed, "No! No! No!" The Bigfoot twisted his head around itself as if opening a jar of pickles, past the point of no return, where the neck clicked. I knew then he was dead. He was a goner. She then tugged the head off the neck in disgust, rather like the grape off its stem, throwing the head out of the shack like a soccer ball, where it rolled on the ground and then stopped. My whole body was flooded with relief, as if the dull aches of my fear had been soothed away by a warm shower. I instinctively ran into the Bigfoot's arms, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, wetting the hair on her chest with a deluge of my tears. I felt no fear in her arms, only a mother's protective love. Her body smelt beautiful, like a pine forest. She was gentle, kind, reassuring, loving towards me. I felt safe and secure in her charge. She patted my back, drawing me ever closer towards her chest, pressing her pyramid-shaped head over mine, rocking me backwards and forwards in her arms like a baby, while whistling to me a rather musical tune to calm down my wearied thoughts. I could hear her words speaking in my head. "You're safe now. You're safe now." The Bigfoot guided me graciously through the woods, where I managed to get into the man's truck, which I then used to drive back to my own truck. Even that journey in my mind is a blur, as I was literally operating on autopilot. Those were not the days of cell phones, so I wasn't in a position to call anyone for help. But even if I had been, I doubt I would have. All I wanted to do was to get back to my boyfriend's house as fast as I could. The bright door of Laurie's farmhouse bolted open, as he rushed out of the house, propelled by a feeling that something was terribly wrong. He took me into his arms, while the floodbanks of my eyes burst open yet again, and I began to sob and sob on his shoulders. What was wrong with me? Forget water shortages. I was a mobile water bank. "Miranda," he piped, "what's wrong? You're scaring the hell out of me. What happened? You're freaking me out." "I was nearly killed tonight. Raped, maybe. Maybe both. I'm not sure which." Laurie's face grew grim and dark like an overcast sky. I could see his square jawline twitching and stiffen. His fists began to clench as his hands folded and opened again and again. His hazel eyes were indignant, furious, enraged. "Where is he?" he demanded. "I'll kill the man myself. Wait until I get my hands on him. He'll wish he'd never been born by the time I've finished with him."
"He's dead," I piped.
"A Bigfoot killed him. She knew I was in trouble. She saved my life. I think she was telepathic. I spoke to her in my mind. She understood. She understood what he was doing to me. She came to my rescue." At that, Laurie's face looked dumbfounded, but he knew that I wasn't making up a fanciful story like this. He knew me too well for that. "She's a bloody hero. A bloody hero." My boyfriend ran me a hot bubble bath. He then prepared me a hot cup of chocolate, watching me like a hawk, scared to get me out of his sight, as I sat there drinking the chocolate on the settee, with my feet curled beneath me. "What's wrong?" I asked. I could see the anger still boiling over in Laurie's face. He appeared to be smouldering like the embers left behind in a crate after a fire. "I just wish I could have killed that man myself," he said, slamming his fist onto the sofa next to me over and over again. I could see Laurie's eyes misting over as a worried look began to envelop his face. He took me lovingly in his arms, squeezing me so tightly, as if he was terrified of letting me go ever again. He kissed the bouncy curls of my hair with his warm lips, pulling the loose strands away from my face, while his eyes burned into mine with such a tangible love that even words could not express. "I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you tonight," he said, almost choking up with an internal ache that was so pronounced that even I could perceive it. "You're my world, Miranda. I don't know what I would do without you. Marry me," he said suddenly. "Marry me, Miranda." "Yes," I said, a joyous squeak emanating from the back of my throat that sounded like a mouse. I'll marry you." It was with great trepidation I filed a police report with Laurie's help, making it as vague and obscure as I possibly could, for the protection of my Bigfoot friend, feigning that my fear had played havoc with my memory, so that I couldn't remember places and times and stuff like that. Although I did tell them the truth about the man, how he had tried to harm me, but assured them that he had been frightened off by an aggressive bear in the area, which had given me a fighting chance to escape. I knew well if the authorities got wind of the true story, if they were to believe my nonsensical account, that is, the female Bigfoot's life could potentially be in peril, and that was a risk I was not prepared to take. She had protected me. I would protect her. Even Laurie assured me that some of the Earth's most dangerous predators are of the human kind, so I'm sure that there are many of us that would go out of a limb to deny the creature's existence just to keep them safe. That's what I've done for many years now. I know I'm not alone in this. Luckily, this event happened over 25 years ago. I know the decomposing body of a man was recovered from the woods. A bear attack was deemed the likely cause of his death from the post-mortem examination. The man in question was a person of interest in regards to the bodies of 2 missing females found lying not far from this location, where I was abducted. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story, and what an interesting phenomenon that people would actually keep their mouths shut about the presence of Bigfoot just to keep the creatures safe. Do you know, that makes sense to me. Until next time, goodbye and good night.